Coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas.
The right side is the winning side.
The late move is the correct move.
Sports betting capital of the world.
We all know when a sharp like me weighs in, the lines move.
It's a party for your ears. This is The Buffet with Chad and Scooch.
I want to buy that guy a buffet.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of The Buffet. I am Chad of Chad and Scooch. On the phone with me from Las Vegas, representing the Orleans, all the Boyd gaming books in the state of Nevada, bookmaker Bob Scoochie, a.k.a. Scooch, a.k.a. host of the pod. How you doing, Scooch?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, people were taken with your story about the Owls last week.
They were taken how?
They just sort of enjoyed it. They were like, wow, Scooch really came on. He brought his A game with a story from his personal life. What I was interested in was the fact that we never really discussed how you have a courtyard in the middle of your house, like some kind of Italian sort of potentate.
Yeah, no, it's so when you come in, when you enter my house, you have to kind of picture a giant rectangle, and I have like French doors that you enter into from the foyer, you enter into the courtyard from either the front door or from the other side, from the living room. You could enter from there, and then there's this courtyard where we actually sometimes we'll have movie nights. I've got a giant screen, and we'll put a screen out there, and we'll set up a projector in the surround sound, and we'll rent some DVDs or pick up some DVDs that I already have, or stream something, and we'll have movie nights in the courtyard. So, but like the fact that I mentioned the Owls last week, it's pretty. We live out there in the desert, so we have some encounters. I remember going out there one night just to have a cigar, and there was a giant tarantula out there, and I had never encountered one of those before. So I've got some interesting. We did film that, so maybe I'll send you a little screenshot, and maybe you can post the tarantula. A kid from New Jersey encountering all these desert animals and desert insects, or whatever you want to classify the tarantula as. I guess that'd be an arachnid. I don't know if he's in that family or not. I'll have to find out.
Wow. It took like
it
took four episodes for this podcast to devolve into you telling stories about animals and trying to classify their species.
You would have never thought we would have went there if you said a couple of years ago, right?
No. Not in a million years, Scooch, would I have ever thought that we were going to go to that place so quickly. This is the fourth episode of The Buffet. We are recording this on a Monday night. Normally we record on a Wednesday, but I am unavailable on Wednesday. Scooch is unavailable on Tuesday, so we're getting it done early this week. There's still plenty of stuff to talk about. I will say that, when I think about your house, I think I have a front door and I have a back door. I don't have a sort of courtyard in the middle that I can show movies on, which makes me think that the bookmaking industry has been very, very good to you.
Years of hard work too. So yeah.
Well, you're old. I mean, you've been around forever.
I have. I feel like I've been around forever. I'll tell you that much.
Well, we all feel that way. Has anyone come by for a buffet this week?
I did. Yeah, I had a couple actually. So keeping the streak alive. A lot of people that. Yeah.
Is the battered Flacco on the menu yet?
I was going to mention that when we get to the Baltimore game because of the concussion. He's. We have another battered Flacco this week, but it's not.
Oh my God.
It's not on the menu, but we can talk about the battered Flacco when we get to the Tennessee Titan game.
It's almost too soon.
Too soon for what?
To make that joke.
Yeah, I know.
He really is battered Flacco this time.
He really is. I mean, it's he's listed as questionable this week, so we're not sure.
All right, let me ask you a question about the World Series because this series is insane and it's getting so much attention. I want to know, have you guys been getting increasingly more action on the World Series as you've gotten through each game because so much attention is being paid to it?
Yes, short answer. I mean, we've gotten probably a lot more action on this series than we would have anticipated. You know, the bookmakers were hoping for a Yankees-Dodgers World Series and to kind of bring in the East Coast, West Coast, two giant markets. A little disappointed in the Houston matchup, but it's turned out to be every bit as good from a handle perspective that we could have imagined. The downside is we've been on the losing end of every game so far. So the betting public just follow the move. The move has been correct in every game. So we haven't won anything, but the handle's been tremendous.
So the move right now has been all over the Astros and Justin Verlander in Game 6.
Yeah, we opened up Houston minus a dime. We're up to minus 120. Last night, a huge move on the Astros. Last night we opened up Kershaw minus $1.45, and early we had him as high as 150, and by game time some places were down to minus 115. So that line moved about 35 cents in some places, all late, all within like the last hour before the first pitch. So another game we were on the losing end of, and like I said, just they've been right on the money. Dodgers in Game 1, and then Astros the next game, and then Astros again, and so it's been challenging, but like I said, the action's been great.
You know, tell me about the handle. Like, what is it equivalent to for you right now?
It's more than like each game would be probably the size of a real good Sunday football game. So
wow,
yeah,
that much.
Well, you know, some of these games, there's a couple of big bettors out there, and I mean, maybe the stories will come out later, but there's some big money that have been on the Astros in a lot of these games. So some of the games, the professional bettors are on the other side, but you know, there's some pretty big size bets coming in at a lot of places in town, particularly certain games on the Astros. So not every game on the Astros, but you know, like I said, specific games, and that the money's been right with those wagers so far.
Well, that's interesting. Do you think is that odd? Like when you see that happening, is that a strange phenomenon?
No, we kind of know what's going on. It's kind of there's somebody that has a lot of money in Texas that is kind of playing his home team, so to speak.
Yeah, I know who it is, by the way.
Okay.
I know who it is because here's why, and I was going to ask you about this. This is crazy because we wrote about this. By the way, this podcast is part of the Action Network, and you can sign up for the Action Network newsletter, which is literally thousands and thousands of people have signed up for this, and they are referring their friends like mad. And later on in the show, you know, everyone loves Jonathan Addo, who we've had on from Detroit, because he referred so many friends to the newsletter. Later on today, we're having another guy, John Moon, who has a great story, who's a longtime listener of our podcast, Scooch, who has a You Bet Your Life story to tell. I randomly called the guy because he got 43 people to sign up for the newsletter at actionnetwork.com. So in the newsletter today on actionnetwork.com, and by the way, one more plug, as part of our network, you can also listen to the Daily Flex podcast with the guys from Fantasy Labs. You can listen to talk about DFS. You can listen to Three Donkeys with Jonathan Bales and Peter Jennings and Adam Levitan talking about their crazy prop bets and prop bets in general. But in today's newsletter, I wrote about the mattress king of Texas who has promised refunds to everybody who has bought a mattress of $3,000 or more. His liability on this is about $5 million, and he said he's hedging part of it with insurance, and part of it he's just putting a ton of money down on the Astros in Las Vegas. So is that what we're talking about?
That's what I heard, yeah.
And so tell me what you think of that. Like, why were you being so circumspect with that? That was a story in the Review Journal.
Well, I'm not going to speak to anything I don't have firsthand knowledge of. So if he didn't personally come into any of our properties, so I can't speculate as to what he's doing at other properties, other than what I hear. But I need to know that kind of information from a bookmaking standpoint, because when I see other properties in town moving a line 20 and 30 cents, we need to know what the reason is, what the reason is that they're getting large action, and then we have to adjust accordingly. We don't necessarily have to move it that aggressively, but maybe we want to stay kind of right where the market is, maybe a little higher, and stay behind the move. I mean, it's kind of known around the betting circles here since this World Series started, when you see such drastic line moves in one direction and then another. So, we've seen it. A couple properties in town, they'll move 10 cents in the direction of the Dodgers based on some wise guy play, and then suddenly 30 cents the other way, possibly on the large bet from the Mattress King.
That's what is that? That's what. What is his name again? It's Mattress.
Well, they call him Mattress Mac.
Right, Mattress Mac. Hold on, I'm looking up his name right now.
Yeah,
I'm looking up his name. It's where is it? Where is that? Hold on, 1 second. Hold on. Gosh darn it! It's like Jim McInvale or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's Jim Mattress Mac McInvale. He's a Houston Mattress King. He had a great quote in the story. His quote was, he stopped gambling years ago because he couldn't pick a big dog out of a room full of chihuahuas.
That's a great quote.
I feel like I got to get this guy in the podcast with us. I think he'd be really fun to talk to. Wouldn't you want to, what would you ask him? You would have so many questions for him, right?
Sure. I mean, just from, I remember, I met him once years ago at the Stardust. I want to say it was the year the Texas Longhorns were playing USC in the national championship in college football. And I remember him coming in with a Texas Longhorns hat on, and I think that was the first I had ever met him. Yeah, that'd be great if you could get him on the show. I think he's just got a fascinating story to tell. I understand he's had several promotions over the last few years. Most recently with Hurricane Harvey, and I think he donated a bunch of mattresses and some of his space in his furniture stores for as a shelter, and so he's a kind of a known philanthropist, and I think he's got a great story to tell. I want to say he did something similar with the Astros in 2014 when they made the playoffs. I'm not sure of the year, but he did another similar promotion with his furniture stores.
Well, according to the Las Vegas Review Journal, he's worth $75 million. So bets, nice. He can afford to make big hedges. But I love the fact that this one guy is coming in from Texas and for promotional reasons is shaking up the entire betting market on a World Series that is historic.
Yeah, no, it makes for a great storyline. That one I wouldn't have predicted. When you start seeing these large moves, and like I said, typically when you see a large move, there's some news that comes out that predicates the move, whether it's an injury or somebody sitting out, a key player, and then you see some of the moves. So that's why I said it's important for us to know where these moves are coming from and why. And then once we know, then we just sink or swim with the decision. I mean, there's nothing. None of the bets are because of information that they have and we don't have. It's just, okay, we're putting some money down and we're either winning or losing here. So that kind of makes it interesting. And I think it's more interesting on some of those games. Like I said, I think Saturday's game, we saw a large move one way on the Dodgers, only to see the line come back the other way and then go back up. And, when you see those large fluctuations on a World Series game, that's certainly odd.
So also what's interesting is, we wrote about this in the newsletter. Again, sign up for the newsletter at actionnetwork.com. The Buffet podcast is part of the Action Network. we wrote about how win probability changed so dramatically in this game in an in-game wagering perspective, and that the two biggest swings in win probability in World Series history had been in Game 2 and Game 5 of this series. How are you guys seeing that action impact what you're doing from an in-game perspective? Because I know you guys have the app, and it's becoming more and more popular around town for bettors to bet during the game.
Yeah, we've seen a big increase in action on the end game for sure. And anytime somebody, when you see these big swings in the score, it opens up a lot of betting opportunities and allows you to hedge some of your position to where maybe you were able to take the Astros at a plus before the game started, and then when the Astros take a lead, then you get the Dodgers at a plus. You're in a position where you're going to win no matter what. So, like I said, it creates a lot of betting opportunities. Fortunately for us, most people bet in the direction of the way that the game is going. So, if a team is is winning, maybe they just hit the 3-run homer, and now it swings in their direction. We'll get a lot of bets on that team, and so we're not taking a big hit, but we have to be careful with that kind of stuff because we're always liable to get scalped, and what that means is you're getting a plus on both sides, and we're in a minus expectation. So we don't want to be in that position, and we have to be careful with these big swings.
I did some in-game wagering when I was in Vegas. When I saw you that week, I did some in-game.
How'd you do?
I did really well. I had the Bears +4 in the Bears-Vikings game on Monday night before it started. And then I made some wagers during the game that I didn't work out, but I bet a significant chunk of my bankroll on the Vikings at pick in that game. And so I ended up winning the Bears +3 and the Vikings at pick. I mean, Bears +4 and the Vikings at pick.
Yeah, I think if you choose your spots, you can really do well. It's a lot of work. It's like anything else. It's not going to come easy, but you have to be diligent and pick your spots. There was a couple past seasons in the NBA with the Warriors being as good as they are. There's a lot of opportunities to get them at a real good price. The Warriors might have been a 14-point favorite in the game, and somewhere along in the first quarter or the second quarter, maybe they're down 8 points or down 9 points. Now suddenly you're able to get the Warriors at -2 to win the game when they should have been -14. And so we have to be careful not to over-adjust, especially in the NBA where you might see 20-point swings one way or the other. To go back to baseball now, I found a lot of opportunities when a lot of these apps first came out. For example, if a pitcher was -250 in the game and he gave up a 3-run shot in the first inning, and they're down 3-0, suddenly that $2.50 favorite becomes only a $1.40 favorite based on a lot of these algorithms. And that might be an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? He just gave up one bad pitch, and then a lot of times that pitcher will settle down for the next 5 or 6 innings, and you got a really good pitcher at -$1.40. You had to spot a 3-run lead, but we saw a lot of that going on, and we saw a lot of adjustments being made to a lot of these algorithms.
So let's get into some games here because I think we've established. Mostly, I wanted to tell that story about the Vikings, so you were able to recognize
what a sharp guy you are and how much
money
you made
sharp I am. When you started talking, I actually went on Twitter and started checking my phone because I thought you would just say, "Oh my God, you're so sharp," and then we'd move on.
Yeah, I should have. I didn't pick up on the clues there.
I mean, all of a sudden you're like into positive EV, and I'm like, I don't know, man. All I know is I want some money more than I planned.
That's it.
I have one college football question to ask you because, again, we talked about this in the newsletter. And this Virginia Tech-Miami game is really weird, right? Because there's so much money coming in on Va-Tech, and, they are a now road favorite against a team that could end up being, if the playoffs, rankings are revealed tomorrow, they could be a top 5 team.
Yeah, but they were such an unexpected team to be in the top 5, and a lot of those games boy, they just came right down to the wire. That Florida State game where they were lucky that they win that game on the last pass, the last play of the game with no time left. So then you look on the other side of the field and you see a Vautech team that is just blowing teams out. So I understand the adjustments there and why they're a short road favorite, but we're looking at the money here, and I think the money is going to be slightly heavier on Vautech, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this line go up to 3.
That is just crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, the record doesn't always speak to how good a team is, and I mean, we're basing these lines on where the money is going to come in. And I think if we want to talk about where we dropped the ball last week, look at that Ohio State game and Penn State game. A lot of people felt that game should have been, much, much lower, that we had Ohio State a 6.5 point favorite, and the money was just piling up on Penn State, and the wise guys were actually on Ohio State. So everyone was kind of divided there, but the way it looked in that game, Ohio State should have only been about a 3.5 point favorite. So we're just trying to predict where the money's going to come in.
All right, so that's one we're going to keep an eye on, and I'm excited about it. Now let's talk about, to me, also, it's almost like I'm just using the newsletter as a script for the podcast, but
I'm going to have to start reading that before we do a podcast.
Yeah, listen, you know what you can do? You can go to actionnetwork.com and sign up for it. Like, I mention you in every single newsletter. I don't understand why you're not signing up for it.
I gotta get that.
Like, you're like my wife, because she has no interest in anything I do. Like, one day she just, like, after 8 years of doing this, she was like, "Wait, you have a podcast?"
That's so funny.
I don't think she's read any of the 7 books that I wrote.
None of them.
One of which you wrote. It's like I'm a guy. It's like a guy in my attic just doing this for myself, and nobody really knows what's happening.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So let's talk about, to me, that I wrote about in the newsletter today, the most interesting game on the board right now. I love this game from a betting perspective. The Jets and the Bills. Like, this has everything, right? Like, the Jets have no reason being 3-5. They have no reason to cover as many games as they've covered. The Bills, meanwhile, just beat a really public team. It's like, this is a fascinating matchup as a bookmaker and as a bettor. Tell me what's on your mind here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Jets were supposed to be the worst team in the NFL, right, with the Browns at the beginning of the year, and they've exceeded everybody's expectations, and we've been making those adjustments to them every week to now where people are actually jumping on them, which is just insane to me. But the Bills are also a team that has been really good to the public, and they just beat a Raiders team, and that the public was heavily on the Raiders. So we talked about what sticks out in the public's mind most is what they saw last week. So they're going to see that Bills team. This line would have been a lot higher, obviously, at the beginning of the year. The Bills would have been, about a 6-point favorite against the Jets. And instead, we opened up the Bills a 3.5 point favorite. Right away, all the big bets were on the Jets from sharp guys. So they drove this line down to 3, which is where we're at right now. The public, while I still think that we're going to have more support on the Jets than we would have anticipated weeks ago, the public is still on the Bills in this one at about a 2-1 clip. So should be a great matchup. And the fact that it's the Thursday night game and it's standing on its own is going to increase the action on this game, as if it more so than if it was mixed in with the regular Sunday schedule. But we're gonna do great action on this game, and so far at 3, I think that's going to be the solid number here.
And have you adjusted your rating on the Jets at all? It seems like that's a team that, from a statistical perspective, you would not need to change a thing because they stink at everything, and yet they stay in every game. It's like they pass the eye test. They seem to play hard, and they don't have enough talent to sort of play for 4 quarters, but they play close enough.
Yeah, we have adjusted, and I think last week was a situation where the adjustment showed, and we talked about it on the podcast, that we made the adjustment, and the Falcons were only about a 4.5 point favorite against the Jets at the time that we did the podcast. And by game time, that line had gone up to 7. So there's a couple of things we look at when we're adjusting power rankings, and one of them is obviously the final score. But the second one is where the closing line was, and the fact that if we were open 4.5 and it closed 7, and a lot of it was from sharp players, well, then that indicates that we need to make a slight adjustment on. So we may have adjusted the Jets down a little too much on the Falcons last week, and we probably adjusted the Falcons down a little too much based on their recent play too. And the two converged and created a little opportunity. That game could have went either way, though. I'll tell you what. The Falcons could have covered by double digits, and the Jets could have won the game outright. And it could have swung either way if you watched the end of that game. And as it was, it fell 5, which kind of middled us a little bit. But still a better outcome than if the Falcons had won by more than 7.
Well, you know what they say, Scooch. You got to get the best of the number. That was the perfect example of getting the best of the number.
Is that a Millmanism?
Well, no, I was actually saying it's sort of a long-time Vegas axiom. Is like, you got to get the best of the number. If you see an opportunity to get the number at a price that you know it's going to change and not go in your direction, you have to get it. That's not a Millmanism. That's a wise guyism. And if
so, is that it?
Hold on, I'm not done with my riff.
Go ahead.
If a wise guyism is also a Millmanism, and a Millmanism is also a wise guyism, then so be it.
Then ergo, Millman is a wise guy.
Ergo, Proctor Hawk. Ergo.
Okay, well, ergo, here we go to the next game.
Oh, boy. I don't even know what to say to that. All right. Well, the next game is Denver and Philly, which, you haven't opened yet just because of some action tonight. But tell me what you would do there.
Well, here's the
Eagles. There's a lot here. There's a lot here, Scooch. Like
there is a lot to unpack here.
So what you want to start? Do you want to unpack it first?
Yeah, because the Broncos are playing tonight in Kansas City, and Kansas City is 7 to a 7.5 point favorite, probably leaning towards 7.5. If you go back and you look at Kansas City's schedule, second game of the year they beat the Eagles by 7, which is looking a lot. That win now is looking a lot better than it did at the time, with the Eagles that being their only loss. So now, not knowing what's going to happen tonight in the Denver-Kansas City game, if you had to make a line Eagles and Broncos, then it would have to be almost the same line as what Kansas City's laying tonight, 7.5. So the line Eagles-Broncos tonight before the game would be 7.5. Now, if Denver suddenly looks like world beaters tonight, then maybe that Eagles line comes down to 7. But then again, if Denver lays another egg, then this line goes up to like 8.5 and 9.
All right. And so what have you done? The Broncos are actually the less interesting team in this scenario because the Eagles are 7-1. Carson Wentz is playing like an MVP. Again, I mentioned this in the newsletter today, which you can sign up for, Scooch, at actionnetwork.com. How do you power rate the Eagles right now? How much have you adjusted their rating? Like, I know there have been so many teams ahead of them, but are they at the point now where you got to make some significant changes?
Sure. I put them probably the second or third best team in the NFL right now. I still, on a neutral field, you still make the Patriots a favorite over the Eagles, but they're right up there at the top of the NFC. So there's certainly some adjustments made at the beginning of the year. The Packers, the Seahawks, even the Falcons were right there at the top of the heap, and all three of those teams have fallen, and we've had to adjust the Eagles based on not only their record, but their margin of victories, and as well as covering the spreads, and more so just the way that the public has been riding them every single game. So, and not to diminish I talked a little bit about Kansas City's schedule. You look at Kansas City, and how that win against the Eagles looks so much better now than it did back then. This is the same Kansas City team that also beat the Patriots, and they beat the Redskins and Chargers, but they had some good wins in there, and they played tough against the Steelers, held the Steelers to only 19 points. So this Kansas City team, even though they lost a couple of games here lately, we don't want to over adjust their rating because we still think that they're at the top of the heap as well.
All right. Another interesting note in the newsletter. The Los Angeles Rams go on the road as a more than field goal favorite for the first time since 2005.
Yeah. So here's a case where the Giants would have been easily a 3.5 point favorite at the beginning of the year. And talk about adjustments to two teams. We've adjusted the Rams upward and adjusted the Giants downward. We actually opened the Rams a 3.5 point favorite here, and right away got both public money. Well, not so much both sharp money, but public money and some big public money. So we're up to 4 on this game, and the sharps have not taken the Giants plus the 4, which kind of tells me that we could probably go even higher on this. The Giants coming off the bye week, so not much you can kind of look at to see how they played. You know, the thing that I guess the thing that's most recent is their play against the Seahawks, which, you know, didn't really impress anybody. So not much reason for the public to get behind this Giants team, even though they're at home.
You know, I agree with you. And that Giants team, like, they laid an egg against the Seahawks when every wise guy in the world was all over that number. Another example of, you know, if it had mattered, getting the best of the number. But Millmanism. The Rams are a really interesting team. Like, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, like, all of a sudden they are who they are. You're seeing real players do real things. It's not fluky anymore. So it's exciting to see that development.
It is. And, you know, Gurley, and it's an exciting run team. We've seemed to have gotten away from the running backs over the last 4 or 5 years, where it's just become just a pass and catch league, and it was just the focus was on the wide receivers and the tight ends. And so now with, you know, Ezekiel Elliott and Gurley and Devontae Freeman, I mean, to see a lot of these running backs kind of share the spotlight a little bit is kind of a throwback, and, you know, it's an indication of how the game changes over the years as well.
You know what's funny? New Orleans, I thought they'd perform much better against the Bears this past weekend. I really thought they were going to blow them out. They covered some numbers, because I know the number got down to 7, but they didn't cover my number. I did not get the best of the number in that game. They're a 7-point favorite at home against Tampa. Seems about right. I'm not even sure why would any wise guy play that game right now? No,
it's one of the least bet games already, and New Orleans winning by 8. I heard a lot of kind of complaining in the sports book amongst the bettors of losing by the hook. There were so many people that laid 8.5 in that game.
For
and
sure.
I'll tell you, and that may have been the one game that saved the sports books yesterday, because so many favorites won yesterday. You know, winning outright, and money lines and teasers or dips, as our friend John Addo likes to say. The dips, I think every teaser won yesterday. So, so
the Addo rule is over. Addo says no dips.
No,
yesterday it's been demolished.
Exactly. Just look right down the line at all the scores yesterday. No matter which side of the game you bet, I think the only one that didn't cover was the Cincinnati Bengals as a 10-point favorite against the Colts, and they only win by 1. I think that was the only one, though. Every other game was kind of right around the number, and both sides of the games won on the teasers. But going back to the Saints, that was one of the most heavily bet games yesterday on the board, and the fact that they didn't cover most numbers kind of saved our bacon a little bit. So we're very aware of that and the money that they've been attracting. They're going up against a Tampa Bay team that kind of the betting public has been burned a couple times. The betting public was on them yesterday against the Panthers. I don't think they're going to come back and bet the Buccaneers against the Saints at all. So if anything, this line goes up to 7.5. Most of the ticket count is still on the Saints here, and or not still, but most of the money is on the Saints, all public, and the sharp guys haven't gotten involved yet.
All right, Jacksonville getting back in the action. 3.5-point favorites at home against the Bengals.
I am now up to 5.5 on this game, and it's one of the most Jacksonville coming off of a bye week and getting Leonard Fournette is back practicing, and they expect to have him back. possibly the best game Blake Bortles has had against the Colts a couple of weeks ago. That's kind of fresh in people's minds. Jacksonville's been very good to the sports bettors, so they haven't forgotten that. They're laying a lot of points at home, but they're going up against a Bengals team that we talked about last week going against the Colts. Why would anyone even be interested in that game? And why should the Bengals be 10-point favorites? And they certainly lived down to those expectations, barely winning that game. So it's not a surprise to see so much money on Jacksonville early here. So we opened 3.5. We're up to 5.5. I can't really see it going much higher than that. If it goes higher than up to 6, then you almost have to take Cincinnati.
Okay. All right. I disagree with you. I think that team stinks. Atlanta, another team that is so thoroughly disappointing. Yeah. Carolina, which I'm surprised to see this. I'm seeing a lot more action on Atlanta than I am in Carolina. Carolina opened at 1.5, maybe opened at 2.5. Now the line's at 1.5. That's a weird one to me. Like, this Falcons team is a fraud, and Carolina is just getting better.
It surprised me to see so much action on Atlanta as well. And if the last couple of weeks, if you remember, I've really touted this Panther team, and I said that you have to kind of throw out that loss they had against the Bears as just one kind of off day for Cam Newton, and I really felt that they would bounce back last week, which they did. This team is a playoff team. This team is, especially if Luke Kuechly is healthy and he's in the lineup for the defense, and when they get Greg Olsen back, I mean, this is a team that's gonna that makes some noise in the NFC. So to not even be laying a field goal at home, I think there's value in the Panthers again here. I really felt that if we hung 2.5, it would get bet up to 3, but the fact that we got early Atlanta money is just kind of shocking to me.
Indy and Houston is an interesting game because now everybody's going to be on Houston, given what they did against the Seahawks. Deshaun Watson is unreal, is leading the league in touchdown passes right now. But, man, this is a trap game. Like, you don't see a team be double-digit underdogs 2 weeks in a row very often. And right. The Colts covered against the Bengals. This feels like a danger zone. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you don't know what you're going to get with this Colts team, right? I mean, we've talked about it a couple times. They seem to kind of win games or be close in games that they have no business being close in. And then games you think they're going to be competitive in, like against Jacksonville, they don't even score a point, lose 27-0. So you don't know what you're going to get with this Colts team. I will say I think they're a better team than a lot of people are giving them credit for right now. It's hard when you lose your starting quarterback at the beginning of the year and you're trying to make adjustments around that when he's such a central figure for the team. So, maybe they're getting their sea legs now. But to be laying 13 points in the NFL, you better be a Super Bowl contending team. And I don't think Houston is a Super Bowl contending team. I don't know. It seems like an awful lot of points for a Houston team that seems to be giving up a lot of points. I mean, I know if you watch the end of that Seattle game, this is supposed to be a Houston team that has a great defense. They let Russell Wilson in that offense, with a minute left in the game, they went 80 yards on 3 plays to win that game. So, to be laying 13 points, you better have a better defense than that.
I watched that game. I remember it well. Hey, real quickly, I forgot. Did you say that the wise guys are on Atlanta?
No. I'm just saying that was the public. It was a lot of public money that made us go from 2.5 down to 2, but the wise guys haven't gotten involved in that yet.
They will. They're going to go in on Carolina because that's what I'm going to do for Scooch Roulette, and that's what the wise guys play. Sorry.
What if I
Sorry.
like that?
I called it. Shotgun. All right, we got to skip. We're skipping Baltimore and Tennessee because there's no line. I feel like we got to skip Arizona and San Francisco. You might have a lineup, but I bet it's just a goofy line because we don't even know who's playing quarterback in those games, right?
For Baltimore, Tennessee, the line will probably come out Tennessee about 3 or 4. And what was the other game you mentioned?
Arizona, San Francisco.
Oh no, we have that. Yeah, we have that up. So
what do you? I mean,
Cardinals
quarterbacks undecided right now.
Yeah, they're like an entry. When you have such bad quarterbacks, it really doesn't matter. So we hung the game Arizona -2.5 on the road against San Francisco, and we've gotten almost no play on this. So a couple people throwing the teams in parlays, but not even a field goal favorite one way or the other. There's not a lot of advantage in the point spread. It'll be one of the least bet games, although it is that 405 game.
Listen, you gotta look out for the 405.
Right, it's the 405.
Washington, Seattle. Seattle's a 7-point favorite. Anyone playing this yet? Any pros?
No, it's mostly public. I think the pros will come in on Washington in this one. It's a lot of points for Seattle to be laying right now. Seattle hasn't been exactly a covering machine. They pulled that game out yesterday, and they got the win against the Giants the week before. But 7 points is that key number that unless the public drives this up, I don't see it moving much. I think that the sharp guys will be on the Redskins here.
Now here comes Kansas City, Dallas hasn't posted yet, obviously.
Yeah, but it will come out. And so here's the interesting thing about this game, and that's why I mentioned a little bit before about Kansas City. This line is going to come out, Dallas, a very short favorite, which is going to seem really, really odd. You're going to say Cowboys at home, they're drawing money, and they're winning games, and they're a public team, and they should be at least a field goal favorite, but they're probably going to come out about 2.5, and it's going to shock a lot of people. And the reason is that Kansas City is still just such a good team, and they're not getting that credit that some of the other teams were getting because of the loss to the Raiders and the loss to the Steelers before that. They got a couple of losses, but still, you look back at some of those early wins, and this is still a really good Kansas City team. So a lot of it will depend on how good Kansas City looks tonight against the Broncos. If they win this game 40-0, then that 2.5 will make a little bit more sense. But if they win a close one against the Broncos and the finals like 14-10, then you might see Dallas go up to a 3-point favorite.
I would not be surprised at all by Dallas being favored. It would make total sense to me. Kansas City could be undefeated right now, and they would not be a public team. And the Cowboys could be winless, and they would be a public team.
So we're going to get money on the Cowboys regardless, so we have to keep that in mind when we're moving this line. But, we'll probably hang it a little shorter than what it should be just based on our power numbers, our rankings.
The Oakland Raiders will be visiting the Miami Dolphins on Sunday night. And right now we think Matt Moore might be quarterback. It might be Jay Cutler. It could be me, and I don't think it would matter. Because that line is going to be that line no matter what. This is a players of zero value in terms of changing the point spread.
Yeah, so we wanted to be as high on Oakland as possible. The numbers, the raw numbers in this one say Oakland should really be like a 1.5-point favorite. And when you're right there knowing that the public money is going to come in on Oakland and it's going to be the late game on Sunday with all those parlays going to just one side, we know that one side is going to be Oakland. So we immediately went to 3. I know there were some 2.5s out there last night. We hung this game last night, and we were the only 3 at the time. Now I see there's a few other 3s, so other properties came up to that number. But why not be on the high side on this one? Oakland is like a wounded animal right now. A team that was expected to get at least 11 wins, and they're 3-5, and they know they should have a game here that was one of the ones at the beginning of the season that they already put the W in the win column here, going up against Miami. So we know the public money is going to be on Oakland.
Hey, one of the things that, going back to the World Series for a second, because I'm just getting a story sent to me on ESPN.com right now by Darren Ravel and David Purdom about ticket brokers are hedging on a potential profit loss, betting big on the Astros in Game 6. So what they are basically saying in this story that brokers own roughly 15,000 tickets for each World Series game at Dodger Stadium, and their losses might be so big, potentially more than $20 million in profit, that they are betting big on the Astros, just so in case the tickets end up being worth nothing, they can make a little back.
Wow.
Have you heard that? Have you heard that at all going around town?
I actually talked to one of our reporters this morning from the Review Journal. He had asked me about it, so I guess the story had already broken on the Review Journal, but that was the first I heard about it when he mentioned it to me, and I really hadn't had time to hear too much from the time I talked to him and coming on the podcast here.
Johnny Avello from the Win, good friend of ours, said that brokers on average have bet $200,000 to $300,000 on past games, and that's just me, he says. You can assume they're spreading it across town. This World Series is wreaking havoc in Vegas. Havoc.
So it's amazing how some of those things that you've never had to take into making a line before are suddenly becoming relevant. I mean, that would have been an instance that we as handicappers would have never tried to predict, that ticket brokers that are getting stuck with tickets are hedging off their bets, So like I said, when we're trying to determine what's causing all this money to come in, I wouldn't have anticipated that one.
That is awesome. This is amazing. Scooch, I feel like the newsletter is going to drive us to having to do a podcast every day just to react to what's in the newsletter.
You might be right. I'm telling you, there's too much information to take in.
Get your headphones ready. All right, let's talk about the Monday night game, Detroit and Green Bay. You even got a lineup for that yet? You got, what do you have, probably 2.5?
We did. We hung 2. We just went to 2.5, basically off of no money, just to 2 is a dead number, so I'd rather just be on the high side, thinking, again, the public will be on the favorite, especially with a Monday night game and no Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. So Detroit actually looked pretty good for 90 yards against Pittsburgh. They just couldn't seem to do anything inside the 10-yard line in the red zone there. But I think the money will come in on Detroit with going up against a Green Bay team that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers.
All right, Scooch, we're going to take a quick break, and we can call in John Moon, who's going to join us for Scooch Roulette. He is a Action Network newsletter fan who has gotten more than 43 people to sign up for the newsletter. That is 43 more people than you, Bob Scucci, who's mentioned in the newsletter every day. All right, John Moon from Seattle, Action Network newsletter subscriber, one of the originals, has gotten 43 people to sign up for the newsletter. And for that, like Jonathan Addo before him, I have offered a position on the podcast to play Scooch Roulette. But before we do that, I caught up with John Moon yesterday on the phone just to vet him. I want to make sure he's not like a crazy person. And he was a lovely, lovely, lovely person to talk to. But he has a great story about Scooch. You're going to appreciate this. A You Bet Your Life story. So, Scooch, say hello to John Moon.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to hear from you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
John's a big fan of the podcast. Tell him, John.
Oh, how long have you been listening?
I don't know exact date, but you guys were one of the first 5 podcasts that I listened to. I'm now subscribed over to 60 podcasts, but you guys were there from the beginning of my podcast addiction.
John,
that's great. Yeah.
That is great. And John is also one of the first people to subscribe to the newsletter at actionnetwork.com. So it's almost like you've been along the journey with us the whole time. All right, John, first, before we get to Scooch Roulette, tell your You Bet Your Life story, because it's great and it's inspiring, and we've sort of highlighted stories like this on the podcast in the past. So share it with us.
It's not as crazy from going to paint sales to becoming the world's best bookmaker. But
do not feed his ego. Do not butter him up.
Oh, no, don't listen to him, John. He's jealous.
No, but so with my story, I essentially resigned from my job on Friday. I'm not sure what I'm doing next. I actually just got back from a 4-hour interview this just before I came on the pod today. I'm flying out to Los Angeles tomorrow just to take a break and relax. And so, but I'm not sure what I'm doing next, but I'm not worried about it. I know people like me, and I think I'll be all right. But times are changing, and it's a beautiful time of the year, and I'm excited for whatever's next for me.
Wow, that is pretty gutsy. So do you have anything nothing lined up there?
Nothing official. I just had an interview today. I think it went pretty well. So I'll learn more about that later in the week. But nothing official yet.
Wow.
I mean, it's gutsy. It's crazy. It's not the same as, say, leaving the biggest media network in the world with a really secure job and a really high profile and 2 kids in a house to go work at a startup focused on sports betting. Not like risky like that. Not you bet your life in that way. You know.
I'll get to that level sometime soon, later down the road.
I'm rooting for you, buddy. I'm rooting for you fast, just so you know you can hire me if I need it.
Sounds good.
All right, let's get to the moment of truth. John Moon, as you are our guest, you get to make the first pick for Scooch Roulette.
All right. Well, looking at the lines here on Sports Insight, part of the Action Network.
Oh, my
wow.
God, he's
Good, nicely done.
I see I see Andy Dalton getting 3+ points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no rhyme or reason, but it looks like Jacksonville's losing every other game. There's 80% of the bets on Jacksonville and Blake Bortles, so I will fade the public and take the Cincinnati Bengals plus 3.5.
So you can get 5.5 here. So we should give him the 5.5. What do you say, Chad?
I guess so.
I'll take that all day.
Yeah, so we just talked about how we took some action on Jacksonville, mostly public money, like you said. So we drove the line up, and I also said that the sharp guys would probably take the Bengals in that. So I think you qualify for a sharp guy. What do you? I know Chad's not going to be happy about that because I haven't really.
To God, this is disgusting. What's happening here? This love fest.
I only went down the Sharps Guide roads because of you guys. You guys have started this game. I call myself an amateur handicapper. I still have a lot to learn, but I learn every week with you guys. And
nice,
yeah,
nice.
The two of you, paying compliments. It's like I'm not even here. Scooch, who is going to be your pick for Scooch Roulette?
Well, I was going to take the Carolina Panthers.
Well, you're not now because I'm taking them. Because you got all the compliments.
And I would take Dallas, but we have to wait till that Kansas City game. So now I'm down to my third one, which is going to be the Colts plus the 13. Like I said, the Houston laying that many points, I'm not sure that they're ready to be laying that against anybody yet.
I don't disagree with you. I think you guys are both making great picks. I wish you well. I am going to go with Carolina as a very, very short home favorite against an Atlanta team that is getting pounded with public money that is completely without rhyme or reason. Carolina minus 1.5 over the Atlanta Falcons at home.
I like it. I do. I like that play.
Yeah.
All right,
like
fellas. John Moon.
Yeah.
John Moon, thank you so much for coming on. Good luck with your job search. Keep us posted. Text me anytime. Let me know what's going on. And thank you for your support of the Action Network and of the podcast for all these years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
thank you, John.
Thank you guys. I just want to say you guys have been a big part of my life. Like I said, you guys have helped me get through some dark Seattle winters. I'm pretty sure you guys helped a lot of other people. You guys are talking to people while they're going to bed. Couples listen to you guys every night. You guys changing people's careers, having people pursue audio journalism. And so I'm sure.
Well, you are a loyal listener, aren't you?
Yeah.
He knows all the stories.
Yeah. He does, and I keep going, John. Yeah, what else are you going to say? It's fantastic.
I was going to do one more compliment to Scooch. I'm saying I'm just glad that Scooch comes with the best positive attitude week after week, even if the Patriots were covering at a historic clip and the Browns were not covering at a historic clip. He still comes in with joy to the podcast and always brings it 100%. So I appreciate you, Scooch, for being so friendly and so positive, even though it can be tough out sometimes.
It can be, but I like you said, I look at the glass half full. The Browns are on a bye week, which feels like I've already won this week.
Well, listen, I hate to break it up, but I can tell you that it's not a positive attitude. It's, as Scooch once said, when all hope is lost, all that's left is relief.
Love it.
Yeah. All right, John Moon. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care, John.
Talk to you, buddy.
Bye.